and welcome tankers to another episode of World of Tanks with PR154. We're here today on Murovanka watching Mine Turtle 1234 of the Raw clan in his Tier 9 German medium tank, the Leopard Prototyp.A. This tank is probably one of the best medium tank snipers in the game. Its base accuracy at 0.3 is just phenomenal. Both its shells are APCR as well, so that significantly reduces the flight time of the shell, allowing you to have a lot more confidence in those longer range shots. Also worth bearing in mind, the aim time is only 1.9 seconds as well, so you're firing more accurately, you're firing with less dispersion and firing with less shell travel time as well, so it can do fantastic work from distance. Looking at the deployment here, it's all looks pretty standard so far. You've got hull down tanks like the Centurion Action 10 and the Super Conqueror going into the forest. You've got the brawling heavy tanks creeping up the 2 line. Mine Turtle is going for an aggressive flanking spotting position, which is also quite suitable for this tank to do. He lines up the mouse and he's looking for a shot on that lower frontal plate, which is the characteristic weak spot for a lot of tanks. The Germans are certainly no exception, even with their larger heavy tanks. He's quite sensibly, under the circumstances, changed up to the gold in facing these German super heavy tanks, particularly once they are aware of his firing position and they're starting to angle their armour. The standard rounds, which, and even though it has 238 millimeters of penetration, it's still not quite going to cut the mustard. So he's changed up for the gold rounds for 323 millimeters of penetration, and you can see he's really starting to make these hits land on the mouths and the Tier 9 motion. Yeah, shells sort of really carving that motion up. You can notice as he's aiming at the mouse, he's looking for those shots on the frontal cheeks of the mouse, which seem to be the common weak spot, and a little bit counterintuitive, I guess, when you're dealing with a tank with such heavy armor. Interestingly, has not been spotted yet, so he's in a fantastic position here where he can continue to do damage. He's not being seen, and he's also able to direct friendly fire onto these targets, particularly from the artillery. He's already done 2,500 points of damage and spotted for nearly 1,900. So this is a really good position for mediums to take up, particularly when there's not too much in the way of light tanks or any sort of counter scouts, if you like, that are testing the 1-2 line. It's just plenty of intervening soft cover. And to be fair, this tank really, it doesn't have a hell of a lot of armour, so you are relying on concealment and the ability to sort of zip towards hard cover in order to stay alive in these situations. So they've taken the super heavies off the board. Even the Super Conqueror that's playing the hull down position over at C4 there appears to be struggling. But it's not going quite so well in the Magical Mystical Forest on the between the 8 and 0 lines. We can see that the team over that side's been pretty well wiped out, and Mine Turtle's team is currently 3 tanks down and significantly down on hit points. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this fight plays out, whether they can carry this, or whether the enemy tanks coming out of the forest will end up flanking them. So in anticipation of softer targets, we can see Mine Turtle switched back to the standard APCR. Granted, that round is still going to be quite effective against targets like the Waffenträger of Panzer IV. But yeah, not seeing too much, and we're starting to take some flanking fire from the Kranvan, and so we better get off that ridge quite promptly. The thing about Kranvan shells is there's never just one. There's usually 3 or 4 that follow. So getting out of that situation was a wise move. Again, this tank doesn't have a hell of a lot of armor. Okay, we spot a 121B that's making its way through the through the city. Interestingly, it appears that the enemy has sort of come through the forest and then just done a 90-degree turn to come through the city, rather than sort of chasing the 890 lines through to its entirety. But that's entirely up to that team at this point. We could see that Kranvan that got a shot on us before, so Mine Turtle lines him up with a premium round. I'm not quite sure if that one connected on that occasion. You can see that Kranvan is still not able to see Mine Turtle from that distance, which I do need to check with him what his crew was like, whether he'd gone full camo crew. I mean, it sounds like the sensible thing to do under the circumstances when armor is really not a defense, and you do have to rely on concealment. He's not quite taken the spotting damage in this instance. A lot of that credit probably goes towards his platoon mate in the Type 5 Heavy, who's unfortunately since left the building. But in the meantime, we're keeping those shots onto the Jagdpanzer E100, which keeping that highly destructive gun out of the game is going to pay dividends later. Still, the situation for the team is just still looking rather dire. They're now 5 tanks down and probably have half the hit points. We can see enemy heavy tanks have started to make a play up the K line as well, with just the STB-1 facing them. So it's a really desperate situation for Mine Turtle to inflict those kills, inflict the damage, and try to level the score in a situation that a lot of people would quite possibly be looking at the scores at this point and thinking, well, okay, we're basically done for. So we've got the enemy T-55A is sort of creeping up the flank, but Mine Turtle's able to send him back to the garage in support of his friendly STB-1. From this position, there's a lot of opportunity for flanking shots, as we can see. The enemy's crept up a lot closer now at F3, so time is running out for the usefulness of this particular position, as he cops around from the enemy Super Conqueror as well, which is sort of played from that C3, C4 area, and just waiting for that trap to close around them. Probably realising that position was not going to be viable to continue from. We see Mine Turtles flipped around to try to keep those side shots into the enemy. We can see he's now completely depleted of premium rounds, so if the standard rounds aren't going to penetrate it, well, he's going to have to reposition in ways that standard rounds can penetrate, and typically shooting from the side. So we can see 3 enemy tanks are angling towards that E-line gap between the ridges. So Mine Turtle makes a very smart play under the circumstances, with the JK lines apparently clear, to sort of try to get some flanking fire into the enemy and penetrate some of these shells quite confidently. And that takes the Super Conqueror out of the game and back to the garage. Of course, the enemy's wizened up to his position now. Fortunately, since the last we looked, they've been able to grind the enemy down quite considerably. While they're still a long way behind on hit points, they're equal in terms of guns that are still in the game, and very narrowly misses that 121B kill. But the FV3805 is on the ball and is able to take that particular threat out of the equation. We're still looking for that E75 and Shah Future 4 that are in the E4 lanes. And there's the Shah. And a bit of a high roll there with 464 damage. Normally the you're looking at 420 alpha on that shell. So we'll be thanking RNGs for on that particular shell. 24 hit points left on the E75, and we've got enough hit points to eat a round from it if we have to. Fortunately, we don't have to, and Leopard PTA is able to draw and fire faster. This, I guess, is one of the benefits of having such a fast aim time of 1.9 seconds, as well as that fantastic natural base dispersion of 0.3. You're just able to get your rounds on target a lot faster than the enemy can. So now we are left with quite a dangerous game. We've got the Waffenträger Auf Panzer IV and the enemy Lorraine SPG. The Panzer IV, it's going to be quite capable of outspotting them. Mine Turtle can probably take a hit, but last we saw that STB-1, it wasn't in a particularly healthy condition, and let's just say we won't be banking on the FV-3805 storming the enemy position. So we see the STB-1 has taken a wider flank, and that's probably a sensible decision. STB-1 does have quite good turret armour, and there are a few ridges and gullies that it can take on the approach into where we last saw the Waffenträger. In Mine Turtle's case, his main defence is going to be more in concealment, so he's looking to set up on this ridge here, hopefully using a bit of bushes as cover. I would expect he's banking on the STB-1, sighting the enemy, and then being able to put the flanking shots in, as he's done so fantastically well at through this game. Testing, probing the bushes, trying to see if he's getting spotted for his efforts. This is about as tight as gameplay gets. So he can eat around from the Waffenträger. You can probably eat a follow-up shell from the Arty, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. STB-1's crept up a little closer. FV-3805 is also playing from the mid, and that'll put a lot more confidence in the sort of shots that he's potentially going to make. Shorter travel times reduces your lead, reduces your risk of the shell missing. So with a shell being sent in by the FV-3805, it's potentially stunned anything that could see Mine Turtle on the way in. So it's a sensible enough time to make his move under the circumstances. Hasn't been spotted so far on the way in, so maybe they're camping as deeply as they can in the gully. Very carefully creeping up into the bush, sees the Waffenträger Auf Panzer IV and sends him back to the garage with a well-placed high explosive round. Starts to line up on the Batchat 155, I think we called it a Lorraine before, apologies, and unfortunately just misses out on the top gun, and we sort of see his expression to that effect. But all in all, a fantastic game from Mine Turtle 1234. Let's take a look at the results and see how he did overall. And what an epic comeback that was from Mine Turtle 1234 of the Raw Clan. He's come away with a win and a well-deserved mastery badge for his efforts. He's caused over 7,000 points of damage, 5 enemy tanks killed, and over 3,500 spotting damage. A lot of that can be attributed to his early play, where he's taken that position fairly early in the game and seen the enemy heavy tanks as they were approaching that particular corner, and just played extremely effectively, being able to both inflict damage to the enemy tanks, to be able to maintain vision on enemy tanks, and just not be spotted and countered in return, was where he was just able to work this tank to its fullest capacity. He's taken quite a few nice medals in the process here. If you're going for the Block 15 missions, that would quite easily knock this over. So he's picked up the Confederate badge for hitting more enemy vehicles than anyone else on the team, and that requires a minimum of 6. And of course, the high caliber medal for accounting for at least 20% of the total hit point pool of the enemy team. But at sort of 7.4k damage. I think he's well and truly accounted for that. A few other minor awards as well. Fire for Effect for doing at least your hit points, which he's achieved in spades. The Bruiser for causing internal module damage, and also the Spotter for enabling allies to cause at least 1,000 hit points of damage, which again he has done in absolute spades. The other medal worth noting is the Fighter medal, which is where you destroy 4 or 5 enemy vehicles in one game. Unfortunately, just missed out on the 6th kill, which would have earned him the Top Gun badge and thus 3 epic Battle Heroes medals in this particular game. Looking at the team scores, this is a very well-deserved top placement by experience. Just a absolutely phenomenal placement on base XP of 1,845. The STB1 also had a fantastic game at over 6.5k damage, and that FV3805 in support was very instrumental, and would have been quite grateful for the eyes that Mind Turtle was able to offer in this particular game. And if you'd like to see one of your videos featured on World of Tanks with PR154, please hit us up over Discord or at any of the links below, and we'll do our best to sort you out. In particular, we're really keen to see the sort of missions where you're able to complete personal campaigns, as well as where you've done quite well on XP placement in a matchup where you've ended up as bottom tier. And the bottomer you are, if that's a way to describe it, then the better the video will be. So we're super keen to see those sorts of replays and feature them on the channel. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, tell your friends. All that stuff counts and helps the channel out. In the meantime, take care out there.